Policy from the Feminist Foreign Policy Project, which is part of Code Pink. And I'm here today with Katie Seeger. We have some super sad news, and that is that Tithi Bhattacharya had an accident with one of her children and is off to the emergency room. So if you joined us for her, I'm letting you know now. We're available to stay on and talk more about the Feminist Foreign Policy Project. I really want to ask Katie, who joined us just as she was graduating from Smith, and has helped to really craft what this is and pull together the community, pull together our mission statement and the statements, and then work on these teaching modules. As we've noticed that it's not many understand what a feminist foreign policy could look like that isn't connected to the status quo, capitalism, and more violence to people in the global South. Katie, why don't you share with us what you've learned in the last year about feminist foreign policy that surprised you?
Well, so I've learned a lot. I was a sociology major at Smith, where I was constantly thinking about the way systems work. But I think in my work with Code Pink and the Feminist Foreign Policy Project, I've really realized just how overarching and entrenched militarism is, and how it so often is just left unexamined. I've spoken about this before, but I think with my generation in particular, we're kind of disconnected from the peace movement broadly, and critiques of militarism. So I think sort of, doing this work, I've learned so much from people who have been doing this work for years, and really just finding out, sort of discovering how so much of the, anti-capitalist feminism I was thinking about all throughout my undergraduate career, so much of it needed that lens of analysis with militarism. It was really incomplete without that.
Oh, thank you. And what has excited you about what you've been doing?
There's a lot to be excited about. I think one of the things that's most exciting when we talk about feminist foreign policy is that the groundwork is all there, because there have been so many women all around the world who have been critiquing these structures of militarism. And, their work is already there. We just need to pay attention and amplify it. So that's really exciting, because I think lots of us in, the US and the global North, we can kind of get caught up in the idea that we need to do all of this. Like, we need to find the answers, but the answers are already there. They've been expressed for such a long time. So that's really exciting. And just the idea that this is something that people are starting to talk about, specifically through a gendered lens of analysis, which I'm really excited about and I think is always needed.
I wonder if you have close to you our mission statement, and if you could read that.
Yes, I do. I can read it. So, starting here, the Feminist Foreign Policy Project was birthed through the shared labor of feminists from all around the world who are sick and tired of militarism, war, violence, and patriarchy. Our feminism has brought us to the same conclusions, that militarism and patriarchy are one and the same. We know that feminists, especially those in the global South, have the solutions that will allow us to build a world based off of equality, cooperation, and international solidarity, free of oppression and exploitation. Our vision didn't come out of nowhere. There is a long history of feminist resistance to imperialism, war, and neoliberalism. We couldn't do this work that we're doing without the work of past feminists who showed us the way. The moment we're in shows us that militarism is worsening all of the major dilemmas we face. The global arms race triggers international tensions, exacerbates social inequities, and intensifies racialized, gendered, and sexualized violence. Conflicts and wars displace vulnerable populations and lead to forced migration. They normalize patriarchal violence against vulnerable women, men, queer people, and children, and often intensify attacks on ethnic, religious, and sexual minorities. Bloated military spending and recruitment squanders the human and financial resources we need for life-affirming policies. Neoliberal economic policies bring so much harm to our environment and communities throughout the world. They bring levels of inequity that can't be allowed to continue. Extreme poverty correlates with higher rates of women forced into non-consensual sex work, left with no other option. We know that women, girls, and other oppressed groups suffer the brunt of the consequences of neoliberalism. The United States and other imperial powers have a history of patriarchal military, trade, and aid policies. And it's still patriarchal even if it's headed by a woman. They use foreign policy as a way to make corporations even richer. They bribe, trick, and use technology to lure the hopeful and resort to overwhelming military force to punish those who resist. Humanitarian intervention is more often than not a mask for imperial control of another country's resources. We know that we can create a future without coercion and without exploiting working people and our natural resources, because at the heart of our feminist agenda is an anti-capitalist critique. That's what will bring global justice. We want to build a worldwide movement for feminist foreign policies of peace and cooperation, but we also recognize the role of the US state in so many of the issues we're facing. So our primary focus is on US foreign policy. We have a radical vision of hope for our future, and we know that our future will be feminist when we follow the lead of global social movements that use a feminist lens to connect capitalism, militarism, colonial expansion, and environmental destruction. So please join us for more conversations like this. There's plenty of room at our table to build together.
Here we are at our table.
Here we are.
With Tithi taking care of a young one. So it's very feminist. It's like the women are there to take care of the needs. And so even as they're rocking the world with their words and their thoughts and their brilliance. So I wonder if there's any questions from the audience. Questions, concerns where you don't see yourself in what Katie read, or what we can be doing. What do you need from us? Right now we are creating these webinars so that there are more ways that you can kind of nourish yourself and deepen your relationship with the feminist foreign policy, because the one thing for sure is it's missing in all the conversations. Yes, many women have done this work for a long time and they're sitting on shelves, and we need this to be the, you know, what's actually flowing in the sinewy of every conversation. So I'm curious if there are any questions, concerns, or needs. You can put the questions in the chat or the Q&A. Thank you.
There we go.
Recommendations on feminist foreign policy.
So, in keeping with the theme of this was supposed to be, Tithi was supposed to be here, we highly recommend Feminism for the 99%. Feminism for the 99%. It's very brief. It's a beautiful manifesto that Tithi is a co-author of that really just concisely sums up all of these issues that we're talking about. So that definitely, I would also recommend Conflict is Not Abuse by Sarah Schulman, who we actually spoke to 2 weeks ago, because Conflict is Not Abuse really gives this beautiful overarching analysis to how relationship dynamics work and how overstating harm can really, it's part of the war machine, and how if we're able to re-examine those dynamics in our personal relationships, we can also do it on a global basis. So think, like, what is the saying? Act local, think global, or yeah. It's a really good framework to apply to all sorts of issues.
So we have many more books that are going to be on our website. That's the new website that's being posted soon, correct?
Yes. we're going to have a digital library where you'll be linked to a whole bunch of resources, books, movies, podcasts that relate to these topics. And you'll be able to find, like let's say you're interested in feminist foreign policy and Iran. Valentine Moghadam has shared many wonderful resources on what feminist foreign policy would mean for Iranian women. So those will be included on our website.
And then also, if you go to the website and see the women that have signed the feminist foreign policy statement, all of them have articles and books that you should be reading and can be reading now. So the next question from Belle is, do you have any LGBTQ speakers or resources that connect to this work?
Yeah, so I hate to sound repetitive, but Sarah Schulman is one of the best, I think, resources you can think of when it comes to this stuff. She was one of the founders of the Lesbian Avengers, super radical queer woman who is really thinking about these issues not on just, the nitty-gritty foreign policy matters, but just thinking about how we as people can really reorient ourselves to live in a much more peaceful way, and how when that is applied on a global scale, it's just completely different. It's a completely different worldview.
And our first webinar included also someone with the book.
Our first webinar, Shailja?
No, yeah, Shailja, but the one before that with the two young women.
Oh, Zoe Samwadzi. She's wrote this, she co-authored this really beautiful book, As Black as Resistance, which is As Black as Resistance, Finding the Conditions for Liberation. She's one of the co-authors, along with William C. Anderson, basically talking about how Black resistance in the United States has always been at the core of these issues, and is just really radical work that we need to be thinking about. Highly recommend that piece.
And then another one to read, an amazing author, Lee-Claire Laberge, who's also on the Feminist Foreign Policy Project, a professor at, I think it's Brooklyn College.
Oh, wait, sorry, you cut out for a bit. What did you say?
Lee-Claire Laberge?
Yes, Lee-Claire.
And she's a professor at Brooklyn College, correct?
I believe so. Yes.
So that's another offering, but do look at the list of the women that are part of the team. They're all writers. As Katie said, yeah, the answers are all there. It's been written about thoroughly and completely, and the work is really to get it more flowing. And so what would you need from us? We're trying to do these webinars as a tool, but what are other things that might be useful for you? All right, well, we've taken up 15 minutes of your time and you didn't get to see Tati, which I'm super sad about because she's super genius and an amazing leader in this field. We will reschedule and we'll make sure that you get the notice about when it's been rescheduled. Please always make sure that you reach out to Katie if you want more or you want to share things or you want anything from us. What we're trying to do is take the information from the universities and from the thinkers and make it part of our daily lives, as we've been doing at Code Pink since we started. But now is the time because we live inside the empire and it's externally creating a lot of violence in the world and internally looks like a dictatorship today. So there's work to do and we're here to do it with you. Reach out, join us. Thank you so much for joining.
Yes.
Sorry about Tiffany.
And I would just like to say one more book recommendation is anything by Cynthia Enloe. She actually coined the term feminist foreign policy. So if you really want to get to the roots, I highly suggest her work.
Great. Thanks, Katie. All right. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.